This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
And obviously you got the win over Luton. You're probably your biggest rivals in the league right now. And welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got another tasty week to go through today with a couple of games in the Champions League as well as a couple of games for game week 11 to talk through. But first of all, before we do that, I would like to say a big thank you to those of you that are watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel, like the video and share it if you can. We are a growing podcast and we do appreciate any engagement you can give us. And for those listening on any kind of audio platform like Spotify, Apple, please follow us and give us a 5-star review if you can. Anyway, Ant, how you doing, mate? It's been an up and down week for you, eh?
Yeah, just all round fucking shit, to be honest. So we'll kick off with some extra editing work for you to do because I've had a fucking stinker this week. Poor in the midweek, and you saw obviously we were chatting on WhatsApp. And I was just basically dumb. I think I tweeted I hate football or something like that. And
lives are being ruined out here.
yeah, exactly. Zambler. Yesterday was just absolutely boring as well. But yeah, aside from football, all good. How about you?
Yeah, not doing too bad. It wasn't as bad this week in terms of football as it was last week. So I'm a little bit more upbeat on the Arsenal side of things, but. With that in mind, let's actually get into it and let's go through those Champions League games first. Obviously, we'll start with Man Utd because that was a bit of a humdinger of a game. Playing away to Copenhagen, we met a couple of Danish fellas in the bar the other day, and they weren't Man Utd fans, and it felt like the FC Copenhagen fans definitely weren't Man Utd fans on this day as well. What did you make of the game? Obviously, 4-3 loss. It was a real squeaky bum time at the end, and you couldn't hang on to anything, could you?
Nah, nightmare. And that was what the fans their tifo thing, innit, said the welcome to the theatre of nightmares. And it was hilarious because at the beginning, after the first 20-30 minutes, we were all over them. I thought we played, that's probably the best 20 minutes I've seen us play this season. And Højlund grabbed 2 goals, and I thought, you know what, we just might
do something
here. We might have a bit of a stress-free evening in Copenhagen. And then, things just completely went west. Rashford sending off.
What did you make of that? What did you make of that? I've seen a lot of chat online that were not loving that decision. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was funny, wasn't it? Because you had Carragher and Neville and all these guys come out defending the refs, our refs, in after the last set of fixtures last weekend in the Premier League, when arguably they were making bigger mistakes than we saw in the Champions League games. But I thought it probably was a red. It was probably a bit harsh because he clearly didn't mean to do him. I don't think it was even a tackle. Like, he was trying to put his foot down to plant to shield the ball, and he happened to mistime it and put his foot onto the Copenhagen defender's leg. So I don't think it was malicious or anything like that, but obviously it could have really badly hurt the other player. So I get it. And in Europe, I think we just have to be realistic about this. Like handball, penalties and stuff like that in Europe, there's different laws and rules. So you just have to accept it. I don't think it was a howler. I don't know why everyone was going so big about, that's a disgraceful decision, that's never a red, blah, 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 blah. Because I think fair enough, it was a red. It was clumsy. I don't think it was malicious. It definitely effed us over in terms of the match because everything changed after that point. But I think it was more unlucky than anything. But I've got no problems with the red card. I have
What did
problems
you
with
think
how we
about
played
the
after.
penalties, though?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a handball. The Maguire, which I don't know if it was for Maguire or Varane, but both of them are handballs. So I think their penalty was fine. I think if we probably should have given away 2 pens for that because they were like basically playing volleyball with the football in our penalty box. So that was shocking. And our one was probably a bit soft. Our one was more of a that you get in the Champions League, but you wouldn't get in the Prem because I don't think the Copenhagen defender even moved his arm towards the ball at all, and it was quite close, proximity between Maguire and him when he headed it onto his arm. So I think we got away with one really. So yeah, it's just one of those. People just need to use their brains and recognize that the rules and the referees are different across different competitions, and we just have to be a bit more careful. But yeah, no, my biggest problem wasn't the officiating necessarily in that game. It was more our reaction to the red card. Because if you're 2-0 up away and you get a red card, you should be able to hold on to at least a point, right? Like, I think losing it from that point, it just goes to further enhance our reputation of being the new Spurs and being big bottlers because we've just got no character whatsoever. And yeah, I think we did deserve to lose it in the end, based on the total 90 minutes. But yeah, look, getting that first glimpse at the first 25, 30 minutes and how we were playing, it feels quite harsh. And that's why I was so down in the dumps at the end of the match and talking about hating football and football and saying I had enough to you on WhatsApp. Because, yeah, we actually looked decent for once. And then, yeah, the way things went, it was kind of cruel. And now it looks like we're probably going to go out the Champions League. So yeah, all round, absolutely stinker of a week, of a midweek, and yeah, very painful week. I think.
On that note, it looks like you could go out of the Europa as well at the same time. So, I mean, at the moment, where are you sitting in the group?
We're bottom. We're bottom of that group.
Sorry to rub that in. I just wanted to double check because I
Now,
sometimes talk out my ass. But I mean, would you be? What would you prefer?
bastard.
I mean, obviously, number one is get through the group and qualify for the knockout stages, but it doesn't look like that's on the cards at the moment. So what would you prefer, to come third and get into the Europa, or do you want to just go straight out of it and just be able to concentrate on the other football that you've got to play in the Premier League and elsewhere?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think obviously first choice is get through the group in second. But it's not even that clear cut because let's be honest, man. I don't want to be in the Champions League to just fucking lose to Copenhagen. You know what I mean? What's the point of that? What's the point of being in the Champions League if we're just gonna? We can't even beat the shit teams. So why be in the Champions League? We're literally wasting a spot. Give it to someone who'd actually give it a go. You know what I mean? Imagine if Villa are in the Champions League, they'd probably give it a right good go. Even Brighton are, beating Ajax in the bloody Europa League as well. So I don't know. I even going through, what's going to happen? We'll just get knocked out in the next round because I really, really doubt we'll beat anyone in the first knockout round anyway. So I'm of the mindset, just get us out of Europe altogether. We don't deserve to go through the way we've played, and yeah, going in the Europa League, you obviously saw what happened to us last year in the Europa League. It kind of happened to you guys as well. It's one of those ones where yeah, you either look at it and kind of dismiss it, which a lot of people criticize, or you go all out. But it's a long, hard slog. You're playing Thursday, Sunday until mid March, so it's not ideal. So I think I would just say, F it. Give obviously Galatasaray away a good go. If we can't get the win in that, then like literally just play the kids against Bayern in the final game, and let's just finish fourth and peace out the Champions League and Europe altogether, and just get back on the training pitch and actually try and work on some some style of play and passages of play and stuff like that. I think that's where I'm at the moment, but I might be just in a bit of a negative defeatist attitude because of how shit we've been over the last 2 months.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, from an Arsenal fan's point of view, I'd prefer that you go through second because I'd prefer to play you than have to go and play Galatasaray away. So, yeah, I'd like you guys to go through just because I think it might be a slightly easier game than having to fly to bloody Turkey and have to fight against them fans. So, from a selfish point of view, I hope you can do something. But I agree with you on the whole kind of Europa League thing because you fight your way through that. If you go out early, everyone's like, "Oh, look how crap you are! You can't even get through Europa League." You get deep into it, let's say you win it even, everyone's like, oh, you just won the Europa League. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation if you started in the Champions League and you end up in the Europa. I'm sure the Liverpool fans, though, will prove me wrong at some point this season. If Liverpool get deep in the Europa League, they'll be screaming all kinds of Champions League, European winners bollocks, as they usually do. But anyway, speaking of, European winners, obviously, Arsenal came up against Sevilla again. I think our predictions last week, I was being a negative Nancy again, and I was predicting us to lose.
Course. Standard.
I think you had predicted us to win, actually, and for it to be...
I did, yeah.
I don't think you said it was going to be comfortable, but I do remember you saying that we were going to win, which obviously came true in what actually proved to be a relatively comfortable game with an Arsenal 2-0 win. I'll start here. I mean, I think it was a really good performance, and I was shocked again that we were able to do that to Sevilla, and that Sevilla weren't able to muster up more than that. You know, I've come to, obviously what they did to you guys last season, I've come to expect that they will kind of tactically adapt enough to make it a difficult game for us. But at no point in that game did I really feel like it was all that difficult, you know? I mean, if you're letting Jorginho thread balls through and splitting your defence open, I mean, that to me is, we may as well be playing a championship side. So from that point of view, I was really happy. It was good to see Saka again playing well. He's got a really good goal and assist record in the Champions League now so far. I think it's 4 games, 5 goals and assists. So really happy to see that. I think it was a consummate professional performance from our team. And, you know, I'm looking forward to, obviously, I feel like we're comfortably through now. So I'm looking forward to us putting out a slightly weaker side for these last couple of games and just getting us nicely into the knockout stages. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, it looked really comfortable. I was switching back and across, obviously, a few times during the Copenhagen United game. When I thought it was basically lost, I started concentrating a bit more on the Arsenal-Sevilla game. And it looked just really comfortable. And I agree with you. I did think you guys would win, but I did think Sevilla would have put up a bit more of a fight than they actually did. And yeah, you've managed to maneuver that double header against them really, really calmly. Two wins, not too many scares, not too much drama, and just really professional performances. And I think, yeah, you guys have made light work of the hardest team in this group. And now it looks like if you win I think your next game is at home, isn't it? Against Lens. If you win that, you're through. You're probably I'm pretty sure you're almost guaranteed now, but you'll definitely be through. And I think you can top the group if you win your next game. So that would be great. You can rest some of your players in the final game, and you know, basically the way you guys have done it is how a top English team in a group stages should maneuver. Unless you get a really, really difficult group like Newcastle have got, for example, where things are going to be really nip and tuck throughout, most of the time you're going to get a group if you're lucky, what you guys and City have got, and if you're slightly unlucky, what we've got. But still, even with our group, you should be easily maneuvering through that group, right? You should be battering Copenhagen home and away. You should be beating Galatasaray at home. You should be giving Galatasaray a good game away, because I know that, it's difficult there, the atmosphere. And then you should be, really going toe-to-toe with the other big team that you've got in your group. And, for a team that have been out of the Champions League for quite a while, I think you guys have dealt with this group really well. And for a team that have been in and out of the Champions League in the last, I don't know, 10 years, we've kind of never really missed too many Champions League competitions in the last 10 years. We've approached it like absolute rookies. So yeah, I think hats off to you guys. You've done really well, and yeah, but I'm not surprised you beat Sevilla. Like you guys actually, some of your best performances have come in Europe this season. So I felt
Some of our
actually a
only
bit
good
more.
performances, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So no, I'm not surprised. You guys have done well, and yeah, like I said, it should be smooth sailing now for the rest of the group stages. I think for you guys.
I should hope so. And I mean, as much as I did say that I want to play kind of a weaker side for these next couple of games, looking at that Lens game, I do want to do them over, just for what they did to us in the first fixture. So I'm kind of caught in two minds there. But I wanted to get onto one thing, which was a kind of a stat I saw from a couple of bookies coming through, that they were putting Arsenal at the third highest odds to win the Champions League this year. And I'm going to use a phrase that you love to use. Do you think there's any truth in that, or do you think maybe people are over egging the pudding a little bit? I mean, it's our first time back in Champions League for quite some time. To put us at the third highest odds, it seems a little premature to me. What do you make of that? Do you think we really got a chance?
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones, isn't it? Because if you look at it from the outside looking in, just like on paper, you would think Arsenal surely aren't, serious contenders to win the trophy. They haven't been in the Champions League for like 6 or 7 seasons. You haven't done particularly well when you've been in the Europa League either. I think you made one final and then gone out in a couple of disappointing games in recent years. So there's no real evidence to kind of point towards you guys having a real good push in the competition. But what I have heard quite a few other people say, and I agree with it, once you look beyond Man City, who are the real contenders for the Champions League? Like, there are a lot of big names and like traditional powerhouses in the tournament, obviously. But are any of those teams really in the right position to actually go on and win? Like, I don't think, as good as Real Madrid have been, and as good as Jude Bellingham has been, I don't think they're in a position to win the Champions League with the current squad that they have. I don't think Barcelona definitely are in, they're definitely not in a position to do anything major either. The Italian teams, I know they did quite well last year, but from what I saw a little bit of Napoli's game earlier today, and they look like they've regressed from last season, and they were by far the best team in Italy. Maybe Inter, I think they're doing quite well. Maybe Bayern with Harry Kane, but those are pretty big big maybes. Like, I think you guys would give both of those teams a good game and potentially beat them. So really, I get why people are maybe putting you there by kind of default, because there's not loads of big teams that are really smashing it aside from City, and you ran City really close last season in the Premier League. So I kind of see it, man. I think it would take a a kind draw maybe, and some big performances against City, because I feel like City's like the final boss, the final stage boss. Like, there's no way you're going to win the Champions League without having to beat City. Let's put it this way, right? Like, I don't see a world where they lose to someone unexpectedly, but I could see a world where they lose in a final to another top team like Arsenal or maybe Real Madrid, maybe, or Bayern Munich. But I don't think it's out of question. But maybe third is a bit. Maybe it's, I'll probably put who were the top two? Do you remember? Was it City? I guess
It was
and Bayern.
City and Bayern. City first,
yeah.
Bayern second.
Yeah, okay. Then I don't think it's that crazy, man. I'd maybe put you on par with Real Madrid. But you could argue that you're probably a bit further along in your development as a squad than Real Madrid. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think it's out of question. I think you can definitely get a semi-final, which, if you get to semi-final, you got to go for it, innit? Then you never know. You could get through to that final and play City, and you've proven this season that you can beat them. So why not? I think be positive, but don't do the Arsenal fan thing online and go and say you've won it already. You know what I mean?
It's all in our hands.
We got bigger fish to fry. That is the biggest fish.
That is the fish that we have never ever fried before. So
exactly.
Yeah, that would be major, but I'm not getting ahead of myself. I think we could be in the Champions League final winning 3-0, and I still wouldn't be getting ahead of myself just based off of our history. So, but with that, speaking of the Champions League and our kind of chances and us being third in the running for that, we're now obviously third in the table, I think tied with Tottenham. And obviously you saw us play Burnley this weekend. Home victory 3-1 against Vincent Kompany's very struggling Burnley. What did you make of that game? Because it was, I feel like the scoreline doesn't fully tell the story of that game, really, does it?
I don't know. I think you were good value for that win. And Burnley are just one of those teams. They play nice football. They have a lot of the ball, but they do cool. Like essentially, that's what happens, isn't it? Like they just don't hurt teams when they have a lot of the ball, and they don't take chances. And a lot of their forward players are just not clinical. They do a lot of things well, but that final last step, they just don't seem to have the smoothness, the kind of clinical nature to be able to take their chances. And while we're talking about this, like big up to, is it Lyle Foster, their South African striker who's opened up about suffering with mental health problems, and he's taken a few months out of the game. So big up to him. Like, you know, if he was there, from what I've seen of him, he's a pretty decent striker. So maybe he would have caused some more problems than you know their forward line that they put out against you. But I didn't think you guys played amazing, but I think you did enough to beat Burnley at home. And I think, the way let's be honest, man. Both of our games this week stank. They were not fun games to watch. Like your one was slightly better, but essentially both of our games were skippable. Like if I was doing the match of the day running order, we were talking about it. I'd put our games near the back of the pile. Right? We just saw the Chelsea Man City game.
Yeah, especially
that was game of the season. Right? Like our games have been absolute shit compared to that. So, I think you guys deserve to win, and Burnley are like we're gonna have to disrespect them like we have been Luton and Sheffield United. They're fucking crap, man. So like the way you dealt with them was how you should deal with a team in that position in the league. And I thought you guys were comfortable. I don't think there were like any major standout performances or any major real stinkers, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say this because obviously, I mean, we saw Trossard score again. He seems to be coming up with kind of important goals for us whenever he comes on. I'm looking more and more happy that we didn't get Mudryk every day. Every time I see him come on and put in these performances that he's been able to put in. So good goal there. I'm glad that he didn't completely knock himself out because he did look like he was going to have a fight with the post. So it was good to see him get up after that. Other than that, I mean, the second goal, the Saliba header, goalkeeper's basically non-existent. I mean, as much as we talk about like Raya and some of our goalkeepers and not being able to command the area, Stafford, mate, what were you doing there? Because Saliba literally just... Trafford, sorry. Like, Saliba literally just stood there like a scarecrow. And he didn't do any... There was no, like, juking. It wasn't getting past people or nothing. He just stood there and headed the ball into the back of the net. There was literally no challenge from the keeper, and it was so close to the keeper's line that you'd expect him to come out and, I don't know, do an Onana and just punch people in the face. Because really that goal was just too easy. And then obviously the third goal was Zinchenko turned into Karate Kid, and he just spanked one top corner. So I mean, that goal really was like the highlight of the game to me, at least, like in terms of quality, in terms of, I mean, outside of a couple of good challenges from Saliba and the sending off, that was really the highlight of the game for me. And as much as you hate to say it, I feel like Zinchenko was probably the standout performer there because he was really good throughout the game, 100% pass accuracy, scored a great goal, won a lot of duels, which he usually doesn't do. That's usually the side of the game or the side of the ball that he kind of fails at most. But yeah, I think he had a really good game, and he did his typical riling up the crowd for no reason kind of thing that he likes to do. But I've just, I've come to love it. It's just like, that like that corny friend that you have in uni or whatever, and you're just like, you're a weird guy, but at the same time, you just got to love him. So, I mean, if I have to pick a standout performer, I'm probably going to give it to Zinchenko, and I don't see myself saying that a bunch more times this season. I will say that, but I do have to highlight that I think his performance was really, really good. I mean, when I was sending you a couple of posts on Instagram, you were like, "Nah, he's still crap." So, I mean, what was your take on his performance? And am I over egging the pudding, or did he have a good game? Just concede it.
No,
Mate. Just give it up.
no, I think he was one of your better performers for sure, and I think his attacking play and everything going forward is good. Like, I think he's a good attacking player. I understand why you put him at left back, because obviously Pep has as well, and he's got some attributes that make him a good player in that position as well. I just think that he's going to get exposed, like when he plays a good winger, or someone that takes him on, because he's just not got it defensively. And he's not quite Trent Alexander-Arnold when it comes to the defending, but he can be exposed in similar ways. So that's why I've always kind of criticised him as a left back. I think as a midfielder, he'd be great. Like, I think he'd be a good midfielder. And actually, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you later on in the podcast. But actually, I was leaning more towards Saliba for this game than Zinchenko, because I just think every game that passes, like, I can't call him a prospect anymore. I'll keep trying. And when you guys in the group stage in the group chats will say, Saliba this, and talk about him with like the real Don Dadas of the centre back history of the Premier League, I still will wince a little bit, but I can't call him a prospect anymore. Like, he's the finished article, he's the real deal. And I think, just like everything he does just seems to be very calculated, and he just doesn't ever lose his head, and it just seems like he's always in control. And you need centre backs like that, especially if you've got a bit more of an aggressive one next to them, like Gabriel, who I also rate him more and more every week. But Saliba's he's just got it, man. And I do think it's the handing over of the baton from, Van Dijk was the last defender like that in the league that we've seen. Saliba, I think, will be the next one going forward. So I would edge it to him, but I think Zinchenko played well. I think Trossard always scores. Like, he doesn't normally score beautiful goals. He scores like a lot of ones that
kicks
come
it
in
off a lot of people's asses, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He scores the goal like Haaland scored, his second one today, where he ass-cheeked it into the goal. He scores those kind of goals, you know what I mean? But he's effective, and he's a really good player. So, what about the worst performers, though? Because we did have a little conversation. I don't think there were too many like stinky performances, but do you think there were any bad
There's
ones?
one that stands out in my mind because he spent about 5 minutes on the pitch before he got sent off. So I might slyly have to give it to Vieira, just because he came on for 5 minutes and then did something that some people might call reckless and dangerous and got himself immediately sent off. And I think to summarize it, it was like, you can see there's a replay where it happens. The referee starts to reach for his back pocket, and you just see Rice, just like his hands slowly reach on his head, and his shirt comes up to wipe his face, and that just kind of like summed it up for me. I think Vieira's had, like, I don't want to say this, but he's had somewhat of a renaissance, because he was quite poor last season and he's been a bit better this season, right? So not a renaissance properly. It's not like a Xhaka level comeback, but he's been much better this season, and he hasn't been drawing as much criticism as he was last season. So it's sad for me to say that, but just for the pure fact that you came on, got sent off immediately, I'm going to have to give him kind of donkey of the day for that one. But if I was choosing people that were on the pitch for a little bit longer, it would really have to be between, I think Havertz wasn't great. I mean, he seemed to be getting swarmed quite a lot on the ball, and he did miss, not an easy header, but like he did miss a decent chance that he had in the air. So I think I'd probably have to give it to him if it was for people that were actually on the pitch for a decent amount of time. But just for the pure fact that Vieira wasn't on the pitch for a long time because of his own stupid decision making, I'll probably have to give it to him.
Yeah, fair enough. I was telling you before we started recording, like I just completely forgot someone got sent off in that game. Like it was even that sending off was not memorable. You know what I mean? That's how shit the two games were for our teams this week. Like even the sending off wasn't dramatic or memorable. It was like the most like whatever sending off. Like I did want to ask you on that because I did see some chat on the timeline and some people, saying it was a soft red card and it wasn't really. I'm guessing from what you've just said, you are not outraged by the decision, right?
I'm not outraged by the decision, but I will say this, right? He had his studs up. Yeah, this is ref watch. We can have a little counter in the corner about how many times I dissed VAR and how many times you dissed them. But he went into the challenge with his studs up, and of course, as soon as that happens, if he gets anywhere near a player, apparently today that's a red card. I just want to ask the question: is if I do a kung fu kick 2 meters away from the closest defender to me, am I also being reckless and dangerous? And do I also need to get sent off because he didn't make contact with the guy at all? Like he literally didn't touch the man. It wasn't the greatest technique to challenge someone with, but he didn't touch him. So this is where I kind of get like, some people are of that, like they're thinking in the past where they're like, if you get the ball first, it's not a foul. And, they have a big problem with, if a player gets the ball first, then it shouldn't be a sending off or it shouldn't be a foul or whatever else, right? And in that case, I kind of disagree. And I'm like, I get it. If you're fully out of control, even if you get the ball, it doesn't really matter because you can still do a massive amount of harm to someone. But my point is, if you don't even touch the man, how do you get sent off? It's like he didn't pull out a knife and start waving it around. Like he literally had his studs up trying to get the ball and completely missed the man. I don't know did you see it? Because I'm not too outraged, but I don't understand. You don't even have to actually touch anybody now to get a red card, like a straight red card.
Yeah, I thought it was harsh. I'm not going to lie. Like I don't think it was a stonewall red card, and I do think he could have easily got a yellow for that, and there wouldn't have been any kind of, no one would have been going, "Oh, the ref's missed one; he should have got sent off." Because I get the whole some people say it's you don't have to necessarily make contact with someone to get sent off because the intent was there to harm them or whatever, or there was reckless nature about the challenge that could have caused serious harm. But I really don't think that was even the case. And I understand the way he tried to tackle with your studs, that coming out and onto the ball like that is frowned upon more and more these days in football. But I don't think it was like a leg breaker if it did connect with him, which I think is the only time you should really be making that kind of decision, not based on whether or not there was contact.
Yeah, like if you fully launch yourself off the ground like a double foot challenge and miss the ball, I can get that. But it's a 1 foot challenge. He's not fully out of control. And we're allowed to have goalkeepers come out and punch people in the head. And that's not a red card and that's not reckless and dangerous. Like, where is the line here? I've lost it. I thought I understood the rules of football, right? It's like when we went to that rugby game recently, and at certain points we just turn to each other and be like, "What? Why did that? Why is that a penalty?" Yeah, I'm starting to feel like that with football now. Like I literally don't. I've been watching football since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and I don't get the rules of the game anymore.
Yeah, I don't understand the implementations. Right? There's some things that are just. It's hard, and when you get the class clown duo of Gary Neville and Carragher going on, Sky or their own platforms, kind of confusing it more by saying, for example, they didn't think that the Gabriel push was a foul, and then somehow the Rashford one is never a red card. But then if that's the case, consistency would surely say that the Vieira one is 100% not a red card either. He didn't even make contact. And essentially, if you look at the tackling action, the Vieira and Rashford one was really, really similar. The difference being Rashford actually made full contact with the guy's shin, and Vieira did not touch him whatsoever. And to be honest, had no force or intent that he was actually going to anyway. So yeah, I think it was at the end of the day, like I said, that match was so boring and uneventful that even that red card didn't feel eventful. But if it was like, if it happened in a tight game and it really meant something, I think I would be pissed off about it. Like, I don't think it was a fair sending off. And I think if we're doing that, if we're giving red cards for that, I don't know what's coming in the future, because there'll be so many challenges where someone's coming up to something and not not approaching it maybe in the recommended way that we have to protect everyone's safety, but that doesn't mean it's a red card. So I don't know. I think we are heading towards that rugby territory where we just don't know what the fuck is going on, but we just celebrate when our team scores, and that's it.
But I mean, on that note as well, obviously the game wasn't televised, so maybe that plays into the fact that that
definitely makes a difference.
Didn't come out and talk their usual books that they usually do about these kinds of challenges. But it would be nice, like if we had like a weekly wrap up where the Chuckle Brothers again could come on and say, all right, this actually wasn't fair, because it does seem to me that it's just like whatever they see apparently, or whatever they're asked to commentate on, they'll be outraged about whenever they feel like, but they don't ever keep the same energy for matches that aren't televised. And at least half of the matches aren't going to be televised. So from my point of view, it stinks. And I'm trying really hard not to be one of those Arsenal fans that's like, oh, there's a bias against us. And I definitely don't think there is a bias against us from the referee perspective, right? I don't think the PGMOL has come out to try and batter us or anything else like that. And I don't think the stats would support me in trying to say that either. But I do think that there's just this, they got to keep the same energy, right? It's the same thing that came out in Arteta's interview after the game, right? They were asking him, how did how did the match go? Are you happy with the win, et cetera, et cetera? And even he has to kind of interject at the end. He says, are you guys going to ask me about VAR? I think everything was good today. You know what I mean? And so this is where it's the same kind of thing from the media is my main problem. The PGMOL, they stink, and that's clear, right? At this point, they're kind of like that, just that helpless head case in the corner that no one understands. They're just like, all right, yeah, he's a bit nuts. But from my point of view, it's the media that have been making all of this 10 times worse. They've been going in on managers about, outraged about all of these things, and then fucking off other managers because they say, oh, that's the game, mate. Like, shut up, man. Mate. We saw you at Celtic. We saw you complain about refs, and now everyone's fucking you off because you say, "Oh, back in my day, you wouldn't say anything to the refs." Shut up, man. Mate. Get out of and Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher. Can you go up for a breath of fresh air and evacuate his arsehole for a minute? Because I'm getting sick of it, and the media bias is just so strong and so heavy already on this product. I can't wait for Tottenham to get real Spursy again and for everyone to be like, oh, he's not so good. Oh, get him out. He never knew what he was doing. And all that they're going to be saying when that inevitably happens. But yeah, it just generally it stinks to me. But yeah, I'm sure you got more questions, so you can move on if you want, because I'm about to get real deep in my bag right now.
Yeah, if this ain't deep in your bag already, God help us all prepare the listeners for what's to come. But no, the next question I was going to ask was around the Zinchenko point, because he obviously had a good game, and a lot of the good work he was doing in this game was going forward. Now that you have a bit of a sticky situation in midfield with Partey, there's rumours that Partey now wants to leave, and he's actually other rumours that he's actually now like under arrest or something, and then there's what Arteta says that he's just injured. But anyway, that's a conundrum. Then you've got Odegaard who's actually injured right now, and so in midfield you've got a bit of a gaping hole that you're currently filling with Jorginho and Havertz. Now, do you not think it's worth maybe shifting Zinchenko into midfield alongside Rice and Jorginho potentially, and then just using the Pep model with 4 centre-backs in defence, with Tomiyasu shifting to left-back, White coming back into right back, and then going with that, because I actually feel like you could maybe play more of the style of football you're looking to play with Zinchenko in midfield, or do you think, look, let's keep him at left back? That's what we've been doing before, and that's the best approach. Because I'm definitely leaning towards the midfield shouts. You know how everyone says with Trent they should just play him in midfield. I actually think it would work for you guys, and it would be a good option. But what do you think?
It's a difficult one because really, like, availability will dictate whether we end up trying that. My initial reaction is just to say no, don't do that, because I've already seen enough experimentation this season. I don't really want to see too much more, to be honest with you. I just want to get back to a winning team and just rinse it until we can't win it with it anymore, which I know is obviously not always the best option to take, but I think he could do a job in the position that Xhaka kind of vacated, right? Like, I think he would probably do a better job of what Havertz tries to do, unsuccessfully, I might add. But I'm not sure I'm fully sold on him actually doing that yet, because the one thing that Havertz does offer is a little bit more physicality. And I'm starting to see it more and more over these last few games, especially with the challenges he was putting in against Newcastle. And, like, even his aerial ability, I'm starting to see more and more value in that. And I think just starting with Zinchenko in that position, even with Rice behind him, I'd still be a little bit worried if we had Zinchenko and Odegaard going forward from kind of like a high pressing kind of defensive standpoint. I don't know if that really, and it's shocking to say, because Zinchenko is supposed to be a defender, so you'd expect him to offer a little bit more on the defensive end, but I just feel like there's not enough to him to really fulfill that role properly. And I'm starting to see some value in what Havertz does off the ball, that I'm not sure he would be able to replicate. So I'm going to stick to, like, it's an option to go for if availability really dictates it, but I don't really want to see that kind of experiment happening. It could be a good thing to maybe roll out in these last couple of Champions League games, but I'm not sure I want to see it fully in the Premier League yet, especially when we're sitting in third, a couple of points off Man City. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see now. And if things get worse, then maybe I can be swayed.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I get it. He hasn't really done it for you guys, but he did do it for City. He does do it for Ukraine. So it's not like a totally crazy experiment. But I understand you've gone through quite a few different Arteta experiments in this initial part of the season with different players in different positions. So I understand why you'd want to just try and settle on kind of a standard team now and try and push ahead with that. But depending on how your injury situation goes, I really think he could fill in that kind of Xhaka role that you haven't had someone yet kind of step into this season. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if he keeps putting attacking performances like that in, then I think Arteta will have a tougher question to answer. But I hear you. The other thing is, now obviously we're coming to another international break, the last one of the year, thank God. And we're at kind of a bit of a natural breaking point to look at how the season's gone so far. I actually think you said you're a couple of points off City. I actually think you're just 1 point off City. I think, if I'm right, I think City have got 28. You guys and Liverpool have both got 27, and Spurs have got 26. So you're doing pretty well. You're only 1 point behind them. I know last season you were ahead at this point. You were kind of already starting to take the lead. But how are you feeling about Arsenal's season so far? 1/3 of the season down. I know the performances haven't been spectacular, but surely you got to be pretty happy with where you guys are sitting.
I am pretty happy with where we're sitting. I'm just glad that City haven't been able to run away with it yet, and obviously happy that Tottenham are not doing so well in these last couple of games. But no, I'm happy with how things are going. I do think that we haven't been great from a performance standpoint, as you said, and that's the part that kind of worries me. But the part that I'm maybe most excited about is that we've got, I think, the best defensive record in terms of letting in goals this season so far. And that, yeah, that makes me happy. I think we're joint with Liverpool. We've only let in 10 goals so far this season. I think, from that perspective, I'm pretty happy that even though we're not putting in great performances, we're able to be a little bit more solid at the back. And I think that's really been the key to us getting as many points as we've had as we've managed to get so far. But I can't say I'm ecstatic, just because obviously what happened last season, I do feel like we might have missed the boat a little bit. That might have been one of our better chances to win the league. I don't know if it's going to be as clear cut this season in terms of us having that kind of chance to win the league. So from that perspective, it's all relative. If we look at last season, it's a little bit disappointing, but based off of the performances that we've had this season so far, I'm pretty happy with where we're standing. From an availability standpoint, I'm not super happy with all the injuries. Obviously, we're not the only one that has to deal with those. Obviously, a lot of other teams right now, Newcastle, you guys, a lot of teams have got injuries right now. So I'm obviously, cry me a river, right? But from that point of view, I'm not all that happy. If we had a fully fit squad, or if we at least had, Gabby Jesus, and we had a couple other players back, and, we didn't have Partey out for such a long time, and, Timber, if we had a couple more of these players, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with where we are right now. But even Saka, like every game that he plays, I'm worried for him. I'm thinking this is it. You're going to get injured this time. And he just somehow manages to come back the next week. And I think Arteta needs to seriously consider giving him a proper rest soon, because I know that obviously we've got the international break coming up, but I do think that even then Saka needs a bit more rest than that. So from the availability standpoint and where our squad's at, I'm not super excited about that. Obviously, we've got players to come back, but from that point of view, I'm not all that excited about our chances to win the league this season. It doesn't seem like City's having as many problems like that, but maybe it's just because their squad is kind of so much more filled out and established. But yeah, I'm not sure about you, but that's kind of how I feel at the moment. It's like we're not terrible. We're not too far off the top. We haven't let some massive gap open up, but at the same time, we've got some challenges that we really need to overcome, and that will probably prove to be really difficult for us this season.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I think it's natural, in it, because you guys, the expectations have gone up. I think if you had this season off the back of, just getting into the Champions League last season, I think you would be probably a little bit less critical of it. But yeah, from a performance standpoint, I don't think you guys have hit anywhere near the heights that you did last year. But from the results perspective, I think you've done pretty well. You've beaten City. You've obviously got a couple of draws against Chelsea and Tottenham, which, you managed to beat both of those teams last year. But I think you've been doing well. You beat us, so I know everyone beats us, but you've had some good results as well. So it's a give and take thing. But yeah, as long as you guys kind of get some of your players back, I think you've put yourself in a good position. Like, obviously nothing's better than last season when you were top at this point, but you're not far off that. You're only 1 point off it, and it probably just feels a bit different because you can see what City are like. Even with the new players, they've integrated them in seamlessly. Doku looks amazing. Alvarez looks even better this season than he did last year. Gvardiol looks decent as well. So they look daunting. And then obviously Liverpool are coming up along the sides as well, and managed to somehow make it work with all the attacking midfielders they have in midfield. So and even Tottenham, their last couple of results, have looked really good as well. So it feels like you need to be performing just as well, if not better than last season, to be able to give yourself a real chance. But I think you're doing well. And I think over the coming weeks, I think you guys will start to pick up performance-wise, and once the squad starts to settle, when you get some players back. So let's put it this way. I would love to be in your position right now. And I'm not, sadly. I'm in sixth.
Well,
I'm in sixth, right? Which isn't even that bad.
That's not all that bad, considering how much turmoil you guys have been through already, and like just the roller coaster of emotions that is the Man United fan base. I feel like you're not doing too badly, and I think that's a great way to segue into what you rightly called a pretty stinky game as well. But I think you guys probably won a couple of boring games to just get some wins in, and obviously you got the win over Luton. You're probably your biggest rivals in the league right now. I couldn't even get through that one. Oh, I could feel the giggles coming already. But anyway, you got through. You got through that Luton game. You won 1-0. A nice little goal from old from Victor Lindelof. What did you make of that game? And I mean, what did you make of the performance in general? Obviously, starting with Maguire again, kept a clean sheet. Onana looked good. What did you make of the whole game?
Yeah, you're a bastard for that. But yeah, put some respect on Eric Ten Hag and Man United. We're the most informed team in the league over the last 5 fixtures. 4 wins, 1 loss. So we should be more respectful when you talk about Man United. You should be more respectful. You know what I mean? No, jokes aside, we were pretty fucking shit in this game. Luton are just so poor that we can be that bad and still somehow win, because they didn't really threaten ever. I can't remember a chance they had. I thought Chong, when he came on, looked quite lively, and he was probably their best player. And that tells you all you need to know about Luton. So yeah, it wasn't the greatest game. It's like pretty much all of our victories that we've had this year, they've either been very boring or we've kind of snatched a win that we didn't deserve. This one fell more in the former category. I don't think Luton deserved anything from the game, but we were very uninspiring, and it was just an uneventful game. Like, we didn't really do much with the ball. We had a lot of it, but we didn't do much with it. The only chances I can remember were, I think Højlund missed a close range 1-on-1 with the goalie, and he
hipped it.
He hipped it or kneed it, and he couldn't get it in. Garnacho had a chance in the first half where he was played through really nicely actually by Højlund, and for some reason took a bunch of touches and tried to round him when it was never on. And yeah, those were like the big flashpoint moments for me that really were of any interest in the game. It was just very boring, uneventful. I think our defence looked fairly comfortable. Onana didn't really have much to do, and whatever he did do, he did quite well. Lindelof, Maguire had no threat pretty much throughout the whole game. Reguilon played pretty well at left back. Dalot was all right. I don't know if I can forgive him after some of his performances though in the last few weeks. He's been fucking poor in the last couple of weeks, and that's after a lot.
Put in a good cross for Højlund. I think that was another Højlund chance where he had a header cross goal and he couldn't quite get it into the corner there.
I don't know. I remember Højlund had a header from a corner, I think, which he put just wide. I don't know if it was Dalot who crossed that or it was Bruno, but yeah, like he wasn't bad in this game, but he was fucking terrible in the Copenhagen game, and he's been terrible in a couple of against City. He was poor. In some of our other weaker performances, he's normally been one of the main culprits. So, but even he looked all right. Our backline generally looked okay. Scott McTominay looked all right. He actually, wasn't hiding from the ball, and I have to say, I'm not going to get on this Scott McTominay's a saviour train and change my opinion on him hugely, but I will say he's shown some real character over the last couple of weeks. Because, yeah, there were memes and compilations going out of all the times Scott McTominay failed to track back or chase the ball down or just looked like he didn't care, and it felt like, from me obviously, but also a lot of the rest of the United fan base, people had enough of him and just get rid of him, like Maguire levels. And he's actually looked all right in the last, month or so. He hasn't been someone that you could, watch us play and say he's clearly the big problem. So I think he was all right.
That comeback, those 2 goals where he came on and kind of won you the game. I think since then he's been looking a lot better for you guys, especially on the attacking end. He's been much more of a threat than a lot of the other players on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, but even his passing, his touches, when he was been playing a bit deeper. So, because in the last couple of games, Eriksen's come off quite early, and then we've pushed him back into the deeper line 6 role. So he's had to do more of that kind of defensive stuff, and he was all right. against Luton. He was good. He was decent on the ball. He had some nice touches. He didn't go hiding from the ball, like I said, and I have to give him props for his mental strength because everyone wanted him gone on a similar level to Maguire, and he's come in and done all right. And even Maguire was decent, man. I think these types of games where there's going to be a lot of aerial duels, and you've got a striker who's going to try and outmuscle you and do that kind of, Michael Antonio type approach. Maguire's all right. He can handle himself well. When you play a good or top striker like a Haaland, for example, obviously Maguire's going to fall massively short. So I don't think we had any best performers really. I think Lindelof was obviously scored the goal. He looked very tidy in defence, so he was probably the best player. But it was just a sea of 5 and 6 out of 10s really from our side. Even our worst performers, like I feel harsh saying worse because they were just average. Højlund was decent, but he missed that chance. Even the header, I think he should have scored. But he's doing the right things. He's getting into the right places. He's making the right runs.
Good movement.
We haven't had a proper striker for a little while. So we've always had we've had a lot of like hybrid strikers or, strikers coming into their final years like Cavani and stuff like that, who didn't quite have all of the movement that, he did in his younger days. So we're kind of getting used to playing with the striker. So I think it will click for him. You can already see it clicking in Champions League, where obviously games are a little bit more open and they're not quite played with the same level of intensity as the Premier League. So I think he'll get there, but at the moment it's not quite clicking for him. I don't think Rashford was amazing. I think Garnacho obviously had a chance and he kind of spurned it. But having said all of that, I'd still keep playing those three up front. It's not a case of get them out of here. They were poor and they missed chances and they're stinking it up. Even Rashford has made incremental improvements over the last couple of weeks. He hasn't looked amazing, but he's not stinking it up royally like he was like a month ago. So it was just one of those games. Like I'm not surprised it wasn't televised. Like I wouldn't have televised that either. It was an absolutely poor game.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you a little bit though. So you said obviously like Lindelof and Maguire probably two of your better performers. He's made a decision again not to start Varane, and so I mean he's still in the squad. He was on the bench, didn't come on. I mean, what do you make of this? Because there's obviously a lot of rumors going on that like he's fallen out with Ten Hag, and I mean it's a club that has a lot of leaks anyway. So. What do you make of it? Do you believe that there has been a falling out between them? Do you want to see him back in the side? How desperate are you to see him make an appearance for you? Because he was one of your better players before he kind of got his latest injury.
Yeah, so it's a weird one because he's been on the bench the last couple of weeks. He came on against Copenhagen, obviously after I think. Was it Rashford? Oh no, after Evans got injured. So, to be honest, he was fucking abysmal in that Copenhagen game. It didn't look like he was trying actually at some point. So that wasn't amazing. But yeah, something's obviously happened. Like you don't not start Varane after last season. I thought he was one of our best players. And although we got spanked for 7, by Liverpool, and we got spanked to 6 against City, and we had some really bad. Big, heavy defeats. I think generally he was one of our best players, and I think that defensive unit of him and Lisandro Martinez was one of the better, defensive pairings in the league. But something's obviously happened. He's obviously had a falling out. There's rumours that he was very upset to not be in the starting lineup for the City game when we went with the Maguire and Evans duo. And to be honest, I understand. I would be livid as well. Like Evans is 36 or 37 or something. Maguire's basically 1 foot out the door, stripped of the captaincy. I was one half of the, one of the best defensive duos in the league last season. I've won X amount of Champions League, World Cups. I'm Varane. Like, how can you not start me? But I don't necessarily, from everything I've heard about him, I don't think he's got that type of ego and that kind of approach. So it's a real head scratcher. And I can't understand how you can argue with him. He just seems like a decent bloke, you know what I mean? So I don't really know what's going on there, but something obviously has, because you wouldn't be playing Maguire and Evans and now even with Evans injured, Maguire and Lindelof before Varane. Like I can't fathom a world where that would happen. So something's obviously happened. Either like Ten Hag has had enough with him because he keeps getting injured, which I think is a fair kind of feeling to have, because it's obviously got to be frustrating if he's always out. Or they've had some sort of argument about something. And yeah, I honestly think if Ten Hag makes it to the end of the season, I think in the summer we're going to see like a real reshuffle of our playing squad, because quite a few players have obviously had fallings out with him. Quite a few players have underperformed this season already. So I think if Ten Hag gets his way and he's still there, I wouldn't be surprised, to see Varane go, maybe Casemiro go. Obviously, Sancho's going to probably leave now in January. Wouldn't be shocked to see Antony leave. I wouldn't be shocked to see a bunch of players leave. I think that's probably what will happen. And Varane, it looks like Varane could be one of those players as well, if this is true.
Well, I mean, especially with obviously the Ineos deal, for 25% of the club and apparently control of all kind of footballing operations, it looks like that's set to be announced pretty soon. Do you think that will play into some of these kind of widespread changes that your club will be looking to make next season?
Well, I don't know if it will be that instant. Like, I don't know if you will see any impact on the pitch, because as far as I know, they buy the club, they buy 25% of the club, all of that money goes into the Glazers' pockets, and then they've committed to spend like 300 million or something on the infrastructure. And I don't know what that means, because if that means training ground, stadium, then that 300 million will be eaten up straight away, and you won't see any of it for transfers or anything else. If that means, I don't know, recruitment and to restructure the football operations, which I've heard a lot of stuff about, like getting in Paul Mitchell, getting in some people that were in his football operations in Nice, then yeah, I think it could have an impact on the on-field performances. But I don't think it will be. I think more likely that money's going to go into the infrastructure, and therefore you won't see any impact. It will probably be something that we see the impact in the next few seasons.
But surely, if they're going to be in control of the footballing operations, that includes obviously transfer making, right? They're going to bring in Paul Mitchell. I'm assuming to get players in and to figure out kind of squad planning for the next however many years, right? So, sure, I don't know how this deal is supposed to work, but surely if they come in and they're in control of football operations, even if that money that they've kind of set aside does go to infrastructure of the club, surely they will be proposing deals to the Glazers. Surely they will be kind of influential in the decisions that you make in the transfer market, right?
Yeah, I think they will. I don't know how much that will impact, like I said, this season though, because obviously we've got January. Traditionally, we don't do loads of deals in January. I don't know how much of an impact we'll have on our performance this season, but who knows, man?
Do you think it could have an impact on how you behave in the transfer window next summer, though?
I think so. I think if they commit to spend more money and give us, obviously more of a transfer budget, then I think they'll obviously be very involved. If we have a new football director of football, if it's Paul Mitchell or someone else, and we have a new structure above Ten Hag, then obviously that will change quite drastically, I would imagine. And I actually do hope that comes in, because as much as I, back Ten Hag and want him to get the players that he wants, I do think there needs to be a bit more longer term thinking behind the transfers. And it can't just be he goes and picks players that used to play for him and people that he used to manage or he admired while he was managing an Ajax or wherever else. I think there needs to be very clear thinking and approach to the whole process. And you would hope it would start as early as possible. And I think probably next summer is probably the earliest it can happen, right? Like, I think even then you might not see it properly. You might see it kind of in process, kind of how Chelsea were. Let's say, I think this last summer was their first proper summer with their structure that they wanted, and they were all over the place. So
it was a
you
wild
might see
summer for them.
You might see something similar with us. and the fans will have to be patient and not expect us to go and buy these amazing money ball signings straight away. It might take a bit of time for us to work out that process.
Well, I mean, one other thing I was going to ask about that, and there's been a couple of things I've been reading around this, is obviously there's been stats coming out recently about Ten Hag. Obviously, someone's got hold of a Ten Hag stat, and it all focuses around the fact that he is the first manager in your club's history to win 30 out of his first 50 Premier League games. He's also taken more points in those games than some other pretty big managers in the league right now. So Jurgen Klopp, Arteta, I think he was above both of those in terms of the number of points that he'd taken from those first 50 Premier League games. But I did hear a couple of rumours that, if Ineos come in and they are in charge of football operations, they might even look to switch up the management. So how do you think that whole dynamic will work? And do you think that Ten Hag deserves to stay when Ineos do come in? Obviously, it depends on the next however many results, but based off of that stat, do you think that he deserves to stay when Ineos do come in and start controlling your football operations?
Yeah, so I mean that's an interesting one, because the way everyone talks about Ten Hag, you would have never believed that stat could be possible, right? I think last season people probably didn't go as big as they have on Ange, but people were given Ten Hag a lot of props for managing to get third, winning the Carabao Cup, going quite far in a lot of the other cups, and were kind of calling him out to be, our next long-term manager, which was probably a bit premature now if you think about it. But I think equally a lot of the criticism that he's faced this season has been the same kind of thing. Like, I understand where it comes from, because we've had some poor results, and even poorer performances. But if you look at things from a bit of a macro, perspective, 30 wins out of 50 is good. More points than Klopp, Arteta, within those, at those same time periods. I don't think he's had a terrible start to life as a United manager. I do think he's had an awful lot of crazy shit going on around him, some of which he's created. I would definitely agree with that. Last season, I was one of those people that was like, Ten Hag's been dealt a tough hand. He's had all of these dramas, and he's dealt with it really, really well. And at that point, I didn't think he was really an architect of any of those problems that we had at the club. But obviously, this season, it's obvious the Sancho situation he's heavily involved in. It looks like this Varane situation now. You've had other, prominent members of the team get, in trouble. Rashford, obviously, Antony's situation, even worse, Greenwood's situation. There's things that have been going on that he's either made questionable calls or kind of made worse than they are. So I think it's hard to imagine us swapping and getting a new manager. Definitely not this season. I think he's got to see it out until the end of the season, and if we manage to get top four or something, then I think you've got to continue with him. But I think that's just my perspective. I think the reality is, if there's new ownership that come in, even if Ineos has taken over 25%, effectively, if they take over the football operations, it's like having new owners, isn't it, really? If you think about it from a football side. Generally, what happens when new people come in? They want to get their own man, don't they? So I think if he does last until next season, I wouldn't be shocked if he was like the first manager sacked after 10, 15 games if things don't go very well, because, yeah, I believe there's probably some truth in that stuff about Ineos wanting to get their own person in at some point. I just think they might give him a bit of time first. But, yeah, man, it feels odd to say, but Ten Hag has actually had a really, better than decent start to life as a Man United manager, and he's managed to get a lot of victories out of his first 50 games. I think, I hope we can just develop more of a style and get a bit more like stability and peace, and less kind of batshit crazy Rashford's brothers getting arrested this week, someone else is getting arrested that week, and all of this kind of scandal FC, which we've kind of become. I think if he can manage to do that, then like he was at Ajax, where there wasn't many scandals and crazy shits going on. You know, he managed to do really well with them. So, yeah, let's see, man. Let's see. It's hard to say all of this after losing 4-3 to Copenhagen and beating Luton 1-0, though, right? You know what I mean? It makes me feel like I'm a fucking idiot.
I mean, I think it probably bodes well for him that I've also heard that Ineos want to come in and kind of get rid of a lot of the figurehead players that you've got in your squad right now. So the fact that he's had some of these issues, kind of, let's say, personal issues with some of the players in the team, actually might bode decently well for him in the long term, because Ineos probably wants to get rid of a lot of those players anyway, right? And I mean, one thing, very much hearsay, but obviously someone was looking at the trend of all the players that you kind of got rid of over the last however many months. And the main trend that really stands out is that they've all got very large wages. So it could be a good thing for him if Ineos come in and say, you know what, get rid of all of those guys, get rid of all of the people that could possibly be leaking all of this stuff to the press. We'll start fresh. And if they can get the investment to do that, could actually bode well for Erik ten Hag. I mean, he's been pretty vocal about the standards that he expects from your players, and it's been pretty clear that a lot of your players haven't met those standards. And I think that's part of the reason why he's had so many issues with a lot of the players in the squad, is that, you know, they were used to, I'm not going to say lax control, but they were obviously used to a lower standard of, you know, expectation in terms of how they behave, both on the pitch and off the pitch, than he was coming in with. So that might bode well in the long term. But I definitely think it'll be interesting to see if he can turn it around for these next, you know, 25 or however many games left in the season there are, and get you a couple of deep runs into some sort of cup. You never know, that there could be a Ten Hag long-term vision. And obviously with a good director of football, Paul Mitchell, if he comes in, he's got a proven track record of doing a pretty good job there. So you never know if Ten Hag can stick to his actual job of managing the club, and have somebody else come in and think of the long-term vision for the club. I'm sure he could do a better job than he's doing now, which, as you said, and from that stat, he's already doing a pretty decent job in comparison to some other managers. So it'd be interesting to see, and I'm sure we'll discuss it a lot over the coming months and seasons. But I think we'll probably wrap it up there, Ant. Big thank you to you as always. The games haven't been the most riveting this week, but obviously appreciate coming in and discussing some of these things. Here's to praying that refereeing decisions will get better. Hasn't worked for the last, 3 months, but that you can always hope.
Nah, it's never happening. Never happening. They're going to be they're going to be until the end of the season, when we, you know, I think what we'll see at the end of the season as well, you'll see a big change to VAR, because like this season we've had so much scandal and every week talking points, even more so than in the past. I think you're going to see some big changes come into play, and I think it will be right as well.
They're welcome.
I think
They're
it'll be
changes,
it'll make the game better. So yeah. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, big up, Jonts. Thanks for hosting this week. And yeah,
cheers,
thanks
mate,
for everyone for tuning in.
And last thing I'll say on the refereeing, let's just hope, even if there aren't major changes, that Anthony Taylor never gets to ref a Premier League.
Oh, he's so poor. He's so rubbish, man. He's so rubbish.
Get that shiny-headed blend off of my screen. I never want to see him do that again. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone. Cheers, Ant.
Cheers, Jonts. Cheers, everyone. Take care.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.